Joining us now is Dr. Ronny Jackson, a retired Rear Admiral for the Navy, former White House physician, and congressional candidate for Texas's 13th District. Admiral, I really appreciate you coming on tonight. You're a perfect guy to talk about this subject because you've seen this from different facets, whether it's from, of course, you're running for Congress right now, whether you've been in the White House as a doctor. There's a lot of moving parts right now when it comes to the coronavirus response. So as we see all these developments come together, what are you looking out for as we move forward?
Well, I think we're just looking to make sure that the governors and the local leaders are looking specifically at what's going on in their regions. You know, the president's worked really hard to give flexibility to the folks around the country to really engineer getting America back to work to fit their unique circumstances. And everyone's circumstances are different all over the country right now. And so, you know, I'm out here in Texas, and we're doing certain things that aren't going to be appropriate for other areas of the country for a few more weeks. But I think that we're just looking for some good, sound leadership that has a little bit of common sense mixed into it.
And this is a difficult decision for a lot of state governors, as well as the president himself, is weighing that economic hardship against the public health concerns that are taking place right now. It's not an easy task because we mentioned before 3.2 million more Americans are on unemployment this past week. And then we also acknowledge the fact that we're inching closer to 75,000 deaths as a result of this pandemic, too. So as we do march forward, I want to focus on the public health perspective for a second. Is there anything unique about this virus as we learn more about it, whether it's contagiousness, how fatal it is? Is there anything unique about this that we're learning more about it from a medical perspective?
No, I think we're rapidly trying to figure out, you know, what medications it responds to and things of that nature. It's just unique in the sense that we don't have a vaccine for it, and we don't have any medications that we know are working effectively against it right now, even though there's some really good ones on the horizon right now. But from a public health standpoint, we have learned a lot over the last few months, and we have learned that it is pretty infectious, but the mortality rate is extremely low, and it's going to be close to 0.1%, I think, when it's all said and done. We've also learned that we were right initially with the vulnerable populations, those that are elderly and those with pre-existing conditions. And so everything that we're doing around the country right now to get people back to work needs to take those things into consideration. We still need to protect those vulnerable populations, but you're right, there's a huge economic impact right now across the country, and governors and local leaders have to weigh the risk benefit of putting people back to work with this virus still being out there, even though it's less than it was, with the risk of keeping the economy down, the local economies down. I mean, a lot of people will not recover from this economically.
And it seems like to some degree there is a little bit of a growing pushback when it comes to these lockdown orders. We've seen a little bit more stories kind of come to the surface, whether it be people going to church, pastors being arrested for holding mass. And then in your home state of Texas, for example, there was a situation that kind of went viral, if you will, about a salon owner who got sentenced to jail for 7 days because she continued conducting business in defiance, essentially, of a lockdown order there. The Supreme Court saying that she should be released. She has been, I believe, as of this morning, she's been let go. When it comes to that situation as well, does that speak about this, I would say, growing dissent a little bit when it comes to lockdown orders from some people across the country?
It does, and I'm really glad that they got her out of jail, and there's some pushback on this. She's trying to do what was right for her and her family. There's a right way and a wrong way to do some of this stuff. Some of these local leaders and some of the governors around the country as well, but some of the mayors and local leaders have let this go to their head a little bit, and they've kind of taken their power, so to speak, too far. And people, especially down here in Texas, don't really appreciate that. So there's been a lot of pushback, but I think it's appropriate at this time because I think that it is time for us to get back to work and accept a certain amount of risk.
And when it comes to Texas, Governor Abbott and Attorney General Ken Paxton, they both sided with that salon owner, saying that what the court was doing there was going too far. I want to make that clear before I make it seem like they were on the side of trying to suppress her business or anything like that. But another interesting development happening today, reports coming out saying that a valet for the president, someone working very closely with him, contracted coronavirus, and he was walking around maybe along the confines of the White House as well. So I just want to ask, the president and vice president both have said that they've been tested since then. They do not have a diagnosis of coronavirus. But when it comes to that, what are the security type of measures that are being put in place around the White House to make sure that the cabinet members, the president especially, don't contract the coronavirus?
Well, everybody's being tested aggressively at the White House. I was there a couple of weeks ago, and before I could walk over to the West Wing and go into the Oval Office and be anywhere close to the president at all, I had to be tested as well. The president has 6 or 7 valets that take care of him. Everyone, whether they have symptoms or not, that work in the White House closely to him are getting tested on a regular basis. I would suspect that this valet probably was tested and tested positive before they showed any symptoms whatsoever, and probably before they were actually shedding the virus. So I think that they have all the right procedures in place at the White House to keep the president healthy. They'll watch him extra carefully, obviously, based on this. But they're doing a fantastic job, the White House medical unit is, of protecting the president and the cabinet members right now and letting him continue to do his job and lead our country as our head of state and commander in chief, which he's doing a fantastic job with.
Yeah, and we talked earlier about how contagious this virus is, and the fact that you don't show symptoms early on makes it that much more dangerous in the sense that people could be walking around spreading it, as we're talking about right now, within the confines of the White House even. So they're doing an excellent job. The fact that we haven't heard any necessarily big names there contracting this virus or falling deathly ill, it's a very good news to hear that from the public health perspective coming from the White House. But Dr. Ronny Jackson, I really appreciate you coming on and breaking down this issue for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you guys for having me.